Welcome back to another episode of BFH Highlights. Today, we're diving into my conversation with Bailey Parnell, an entrepreneur and leadership expert who turned a missing piece of education into a thriving business. She shares lessons on taking risks, handling tough conversations, and the future of leadership. Let's dive in. Hi there. I'm Trevor Coote, and this is Business is Fucking Hard, the podcast where business owners pull back the curtain and talk about the realities of owning a business. We'll hear their stories, learn some lessons, and have some fun along the way. Thanks for joining us. Bailey didn't set out to start a business. She saw a major gap in soft skills education while working at Toronto Metropolitan University. Instead of waiting for someone else to solve it, she built the solution.
I was working in student affairs, which is kind of everything outside the classroom that supports student success. So things like health and wellness departments and career centers and learning support and housing and community and skill building and really what I would now call, the soft skills development of the person outside the classroom. And it was very clear that the students who were using these services were much more successful, but the reality was that most weren't. And frankly, the employees also needed those services. And they were becoming employees that didn't have these requisite skills to succeed. And I'm thinking, wait, I work with the Career Center because I serviced all these departments. And I thought, employers are literally asking for ability to work well with others, ability to communicate well, emotional intelligence. Why is it not being taught in the classroom? And because I had this unique background, and some of your listeners may have met the co-founder at the time, Hamza Khan, we just thought, well, okay, nobody's teaching these glaringly important skills, these things we might call soft skills or transferable skills, but they are skills. I happen to know this because we are teaching them at the university. So obviously I'm just going to have to teach them. and that's where the entrepreneurship was born in a more formal way.
Big takeaway here. Pay attention to the problems around you. The best businesses don't start with a product. They start with a need. Balancing a job while building something new isn't easy, especially when your employer finds out. Here's how Bailey handled a tough conflict of interest conversation.
Oh, I don't know. What happened though was there was somebody who worked for the Career Center at that orientation, obviously, and they went back to their boss who was like, why is Bailey doing this? And then their boss went to my boss, and then my boss went to me and was like, what are you doing? So then I was called into a meeting with HR, union representation, and my bosses, and we had to talk about what we do at Skills Camp and what we are allowed to do. And this was probably, to be honest, like a year, maybe even a year and a half into the business, right? It just had not come up before because like everything was happening outside of work, really. And it ended up working out in my favor, I think, in the end, because the rules ended up being you are not allowed to take business that is within the purview of what was then called Ryerson Student Affairs. And why that worked in my favor was because I thought, okay, that is one department of one university in one city. And that's perfect because I know some friends that work for the government that are not allowed to take any single paid gig outside of their role. So I'm like, all right, that works for me. And then there was actually a level of transparency with my boss.
Lesson learned. Transparency matters. If you're growing something on the side, make sure you have a plan for when people start paying attention. Fear of failure keeps a lot of people stuck. But Bailey had a conversation with a mentor that completely changed how she looked at risk.
Why I stayed at the university for 2.5 years before going full time was that I wanted to make sure that I had enough in the bank account to afford me for at least a year and at what I was making then. And the reason why, was because I knew myself 100%. And to your point, I knew that if I was worried about eating, I was not going to be in the best place to be focusing on the business. So that's why I had to do it a little bit of a different way. I did have a conversation with a mentor at the time that helped me reframe the risk though. And I said, I do want to go full time with Skills Camp. He said, you have clients and it's obviously working. Like, do you think you can make more money if you go full time? And I was like, yeah, if you give it your full energy. And he said, then why aren't you? He's like, what are you afraid of? So then the whole conversation made me reframe the risk, which was that what I considered worst case scenario, this other entrepreneur was like, so then you just do it again. It made me realize that what I was actually fearing, which I don't have as, again, probably shed a lot of that literally this year. Um, what I was probably fearing was failing publicly and having to tell people why this didn't work. But obviously I
Yeah.
did it anyway. So
If the worst case scenario won't destroy you, then why not take the shot? Most people get promoted because they're good at their job, but that doesn't mean that they know how to lead. Bailey explains why soft skills are crucial.
yeah, well, you want to talk about a hard part of business. When we go into businesses, we are brought in very particularly for the hard part, that is people. and and when people come together to do anything, literally anything, collaborate with two or more people, there are going to be people problems or challenges, right? And a lot of these people problems, the hard part of business, certainly come from leadership, and they come from leadership as a problem and as a potential solution, because when leaders come to us, some of their hard parts of business is dealing with their people. And very often this has to do with, those stoic leaders that you mentioned. Very often those leaders were put in place because they were good at something. That's how they became the top of the department. But that doesn't mean that they had any of the skills to do what their new job required of them, which probably changed overnight, which was to lead other people. So even if they got any training, which by the way, a lot of them don't have, by the way, any training at all about people leadership. And that's not an exaggeration. You would think if your listeners are as surprised as I am to learn all this stuff, it's like, wait, my manager never even had training about how to manage people? The answer is probably not. That's actually what it is.
Great leaders don't have to be the best at everything. They just need to bring out the best in others. AI isn't just about automation. It could actually help leaders develop emotional intelligence. Here's how Bailey sees the future of leadership.
But it seems to me to actually have a very natural connection to the world of learning and education, because how can we extend our intelligence when I'm no longer with you? That's one. Two, it is right now still very much like seen as a technological tool. Okay. So there is a long history of leaders using tools and communication and internet communication technology tools for better leadership, for better human centric leadership, to be fair. And my dissertation is quite literally, a whole section of it is on for transformational leadership, which inherently is the leadership style that is built on the leveling and the focus on people and development and relationships. So early exploration is that I think generative AI is going to be able to support leaders in things like giving feedback, in creating understanding cross-cultural implications, understanding intergenerational dynamics, being able to communicate assertively and not aggressively, being able to I feel like I could literally go on and on. Almost every single skill we have could be supported in some way by our collected intelligence. And so that is early thinking on it. But honestly, you got to let me conduct my study first, and then I'll tell you what I literally found.
Tech isn't replacing great leaders. It's giving them more tools to be even greater. Bailey's story is all about recognizing an opportunity, taking action, and navigating challenges with confidence. If you found this valuable, check out the full episode with Bailey Parnell and subscribe for more BFH highlights. See you next time.